Ladies and gentlemen, people of the internet, welcome back to yet another episode of Crypto Over Coffee. Hope you're doing well on this fine Friday, weekend, or weekday, whenever it is that you're watching. And if you're new here, every single Friday I break down the latest news and the hottest topics in the world of technology and cryptocurrency over a cup of delicious coffee. And I'm featuring a mug made by the Coffee Link folks, so thank you very much for this mug. In today's episode, we have updates from the Cardano Summit's second day, some Bitcoin news, a big Ethereum challenge to talk about, and of course, our usual 404 Logic Not Found segment. But before we get into all of that, let's kick it off with some questions from the community on YouTube and Twitter, and actually dChat, which more on that in a bit. But if you want one of your questions answered in a future episode, leave them in the comments down below or tweet me at Hashoshi4. And if you would be so inclined, please do subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification button next to the subscribe button so you can get a heads up whenever I post new content. Thank you in advance. Let's dive into the first question. So Spicy Colobus chat.crypto, this is on dChat. We'll talk more about that shortly. Hey Hashoshi. Any thoughts on the Deeper Connect decentralized private network project? Now, specifically, I don't have much knowledge on Deeper Connect, but I did just get an email from them. They were trying to talk about their product. So they have sort of a hardware-software combination product going on right now. Essentially, it's a VPN-based service, a VPN device to help you protect your privacy and security online at your house from your connected router and modem. Beyond that, there is also a cryptocurrency component that I'm still trying to understand. I have a feeling it's probably to either incentivize a decentralized VPN network, or it's going to be used to pay for certain services or secure the network in some other way. But essentially, each of these little devices is going to be a relay node of some kind, I have a feeling. So I will do some more digging on this project, but thank you for mentioning it because they did reach out to me. It's just a coincidence, so I figured I would answer this question, and thank you for sending your question on dChat. Now, Torin Green asks on Twitter, actually, another great video, thank you very much. I was wondering how easy you think it will be to become an ETH2 validator, ignoring the 32 ETH hurdle. Would it be something I could set up on a Raspberry Pi in my bedroom, for example? This is another great question, and the answer is yes. You can, theoretically, because this is obviously changing continuously, you'll theoretically be able to use Raspberry Pis or phones or really weak hardware on a laptop or computer to run an ETH 2.0 validator, a validator node, which is going to be used as a stake validator or a block validator on a sharded chain. Now, the reality is, though, that there are two types of nodes that will inevitably be part of this process in ETH 2.0. There will be the beacon node, which helps sort of keep track of the main beacon chain, which is what should be launching in July of this year. And then there's a validator node, which will participate in proof of stake more directly. So the beacon nodes are going to be more like server hardware. You're probably going to need an AWS, like an EC2 instance to run it, or you're going to need to run your own bare metal at your house. So those are going to be a little bit more more of a high barrier to entry for ETH 2.0. So that's the beacon nodes. But the validators are intended to be weaker hardware that most people will have, just to make sure that you're not priced out of participating beyond that 32 ETH, because obviously now that's already a significant hurdle for a lot of people, being over $6,000 US, $7,000 US, just to participate in staking directly without delegating. So great question. Hopefully it'll be easy enough to become a validator. Canuck Buck asks, what are some of the biggest areas of blockchain technology, or that blockchain technology is being rolled out for? I've heard that organizations like the post office and delivery companies have said blockchain has been revolutionizing supply chain. Cannot talk today. Interesting. So yeah, there are a handful of ways that blockchain is being applied in industry. Supply chain is a huge element for blockchain. There are companies like VeChain that are very focused on supply chain oriented use cases. And there are organizations, again, like you said, the Postal Service, UPS, FedEx, all those logistics companies have been trying to find ways to see if they can use blockchain to help data be transferred in near real time to all the stakeholders. there is opportunity there for them to track provenance of a product from international shipments, but also just to track internally with a true audit trail, right? One of the biggest challenges, say in like an eBay transaction, right, is you need to trust the tracking information that gets provided from a post office service of some kind to eBay, who then let PayPal know, okay, you can release the funds. Oftentimes, these are not really cryptographically secure. Oftentimes, drivers just say, okay, yeah, the package has been grabbed. It's fine. It's been delivered. If it's been delivered to the wrong place, payment can be released. This whole thing's a mess. So blockchain in many cases has been used, like how can we use private key cryptography in many ways to have people sign cryptographically using a crypto address or a blockchain-based address to say they've received a package, and then use a smart contract to release payment. So there are some really interesting use cases there, but I think overarchingly, supply chain is a big niche, but I also think digital identity is another place where a lot of people are playing. And then secondarily, I think just internal audit, but cross-business audit is another place where blockchain is being used as sort of a transactional layer to keep a history of every transaction, whether that's financial transactions or transactions of data internally, because it's a great tool for that as well. So I know this is not a fully robust answer, but hopefully that gives you at least something to go off of. Thank you for your question. Zolt Sabo asks, first of all, thank you for the hard work. No problem. I'm happy to do it. Thanks very much for watching. It said, I tried to Google the answer but couldn't find a straight one. Does ERC tokens market cap go into ETH total market cap, or does it affect ETH's price in any way? So technically, ERC20s all have their own market cap. So ERC20 as a standard has its own market cap, and then each coin that is made from that standard has its own market cap as well, depending on the site that you're on. It does not feed into, like for an ICO, it wouldn't feed into ETH's market cap. That's done purposefully. That would be misrepresented in my opinion. And it does affect Ethereum's price or ETH's price only because of people's heads, right? You think if ERC20 tokens do really well, then that's good for ETH's price. But in reality, it's not directly correlated, in my opinion, in any real, like, statistically significant way. People just maybe believe that it does. And I also think crypto kind of moves in waves, and it all kind of moves together. So if ERCs are doing really well, ETH is probably doing really well. So the effect is not drawn from any real correlation, except that that's just the way it's valued. So hopefully that answers your question, but no, the ERC20 token should not be a part of ETH's market cap. Todd Mullis asks, are you a Cardano fan? Yes, I am a Cardano fan. There are a lot of people who dislike Cardano. There are a lot of people who like Cardano. I don't judge either way. I think Cardano is a high quality project. That's my personal opinion. I don't have to love everything they do. I've been critical of them in the past, and I feel like I'm pretty fair in my justification about why I like things and why I don't. So yeah, I am a Cardano fan and proud to be one. George Escobar asks, well, this is the long one, guys. He says, my question is, how do you see this tool specifically compared to what other blockchain projects currently offer? And this is about Cardano. In my opinion, Cardano is another project that is solving or attempting to solve a big problem in the space. And that is, we need secure, near real-time, scalable, like we need a smart contract-based solution that runs a blockchain network that is decentralized, but is also fast enough to service applications that would be valuable to us on a day-to-day basis. The reality, though, is that I think a lot of people become financially invested and then emotionally invested in a project, and they refuse to believe that any other project has any merit whatsoever. Cardano, compared to other blockchain projects, has a lot of unique things. They have a smart contract language that's coming that's built off of Haskell. There is no other blockchain protocol out there that uses a smart contract language based on Haskell. They've taken a totally different approach in trying to build a graphic user interface programming language layer on top of Plutus. They've also taken a lot of time, instead of pushing out a V1 version of proof of stake and then doing a fork to add sort of the latest and greatest more than once, they said, we're only going to release Shelly, which is supposed to release at the end of this month, one time. It's going to work right away. We're going to do all the research up front, which is different than how Ethereum does things, which is let's try and push things quickly. Let's get things done. Let's put, EIPs out there and get things integrated. Then we'll hash it out and figure it out. It's different. And again, the approach that Tezos or Algorand has taken are all very different. Different programming languages, different design decisions, different architectures, different structures in terms of networks, where they did trade-offs, where they didn't. So we're probably going to see that these platforms are niche down, and interoperability is going to be key, where some players might want to use one network because they are naturally akin to the software architecture people are used to. Haskell developers probably going to want to use Plutus and Cardano, whereas someone who's more familiar with JavaScript or C might want to use Solidity on Ethereum. It all really depends. And so comparing them apples to apples only extends as far as calling them both blockchains and cryptocurrencies and in this space, when a lot of them don't really have that many similarities actually underneath the hood in terms of their architecture, which I'm happy to see, because we used to just see clones and clones and clones and clones of each other. But now a lot of these projects are very different, so it's really cool to see. So thank you very much for your question, and let's go ahead and dive into the news for the day. Now, right off the bat today, I want to tell you that today's episode is sponsored by my friends over at Unstoppable Domains, so I wanted to give a big thanks to them for that. Now, I've been a supporter of their work basically since the very beginning, long before they even had their first domain ready, before they had a product ready, and now I'm so excited to get to see the many, many things that they've built using these blockchain-based domains, and subsequently what people have built using their domains, including websites and blogs and all these things. But that said, this past week, Unstoppable Domains launched dChat, which is an end-to-end encrypted chat application that utilizes your blockchain-based domain and your Ethereum keys to allow you to chat securely and privately. Now, I was able to connect my Hashoshi4.crypto domain to the dChat application within a matter of minutes using MetaMask and Unstoppable Domains domain management dashboard that's on their website. Now, I highly recommend you try it out, and I will show you how that works here on the screen. Probably it's already on the screen if you're watching. And this project itself, the dChat project, was incubated in Mozilla's Fix the Internet program, and it's built with GunDB, a P2P centralized database platform, which is actually used by the famous blogging outlet Hacker Noon to serve content. And using your Ethereum public and private key in your .crypto domain, for example, your public key can be used to encrypt a message, and then the content can be sent in ciphertext format to you using GunDB's P2P network. From there, only your private key can decrypt and allow you to read that message. And at no point in time is that message held in custody by someone else. You're not passing through another server. This happens P2P. Now, in this equation, your domain is basically your username, and authentication occurs with a signed message using your private key, which essentially proves that you own the domain that you're using as your username. Now, the chat system itself is not reliant on Unstoppable Domains, the company, and they don't really control who can use the platform, and nor can they access your messages or really any of your content. The concept here is to create a protocol that can be used by a wide variety of different companies who build their own user interfaces and APIs for this very protocol. But your messages and your content will be the same across all of these platforms that want to use this dChat protocol. So a true decentralized and unified inbox across the internet is really kind of what they're going for. Now, I'm so stoked about this project, and it's only the beginning for what I think could be built with this protocol. In fact, if you message me at Hashoshi4.crypto on dChat between now and next Friday's episode, I'll pick a couple winners and send you some Ether using dChat's built-in crypto send functionality. And if you don't have a domain yet, I will leave a link down below to grab one from Unstoppable Domains. And for those who do, I will also leave a link to dChat if you're interested, and feel free to ask me any questions that you might have for myself in regards to dChat or for the Unstoppable Domains team. Now, staying in the realm of interesting crypto and blockchain-based products, one project that many people on the channel have asked me about and asked me to review is Orchid. And Orchid is a project that's focused on decentralized virtual private network protocols, and they just recently launched their official iOS VPN application that utilizes the Orchid protocol. In essence, the Orchid protocol is dependent on a decentralized community of bandwidth providers who help service internet traffic in the network. And in return, they're rewarded with the native OXT token. Now, there's a lot more to this protocol than that, but you get the idea. I don't have the time to go through all the complexities, but of course, there might be another video coming. One big issue prior to this release is not only was there no elegant way to really use Orchid's protocol, as promising as it was, access to the OXT token was also pretty limited also. However, with the release of this iOS app, users can now buy OXT directly using Apple Pay within the app. And this is definitely a smart move because it gives you more access. Now, I'm still due to test this out a little bit more for security and speed myself now that it's released, so this is not an endorsement yet. I would like to see how this works myself more in depth before I give my endorsement. But what I really like here is that Orchid rapidly pivoted to provide users critical internet security and privacy during times where we need it the most, because obviously there's increased risk of cyber attacks these days, and not to mention the variety of political turmoil happening around the world that really warrants concerns about privacy. That said, I'm still very partial to my favorite VPN of all time, still my daily driver, and that is Surfshark, which I will link up below if you're interested in an affordable but high quality VPN and you don't have one yet. So check that out in the description below if you want to. All right, moving on into the world of Bitcoin now. This week has been yet again pretty uneventful, with the exception of a pretty rough day on Thursday. Bitcoin's price dropped in correlation with the stock market after a handful of political news items seemed to shake the market up. Now, Bitcoin scraped close to 9K flat, but to be honest, it's been sluggish in the 9K range for a while now, so I'm not really concerned or all that surprised. Now, I quite frankly would not be surprised if we saw some short-term drop below 9K at this point. I just don't see a catalyst for that challenging push above 10K yet. Of course, now that I said that, watch tomorrow it's going to break 10K because it seems to always happen that way. Now, one trend to me that is extremely bullish though is that there have been an increasingly record number of customers pulling their Bitcoin off of custodial exchanges, which signals to me two things. One, it says to me that people are finally getting the message that you should own your own crypto by taking custody of it. And two, it illustrates a relative level in confidence in Bitcoin itself, because removing it from a fiat on-ramp implies a lack of intent to sell in the near future. So consumers are signaling that they're in a lot of ways bullish and they're taking things seriously. Now, I'm very much excited about both of those things, but in regards to the Bitcoin protocol itself, I did read some interesting research that discussed the benefits of ASIC mining for Bitcoin from a security perspective. Now, researchers at the University of California, Santa Barbara conducted a study that instead of trying to freeze out ASIC miners in preference of GPU miners, it may be of benefit to do the opposite. And their data suggests that making Bitcoin mining 100% ASIC focused, there could be a relative increase in cost for a 51% attack at a factor of 2,000. So that's very significant. And firstly, ASIC hardware has little use or value really outside of Bitcoin mining, for which it is tailor-made and designed. So an attacker would be introducing a large amount of sunk cost just to perform an attack. And secondly, a larger number of ASICs would be required to ultimately perform said attack, along with a far higher threshold for profit when it comes to how much double spent BTC it would take to turn a profit in this ASIC environment. Now, the Bitcoin community is largely torn on ASIC mining, and I totally get that. But to me, this is really interesting research. I think, though, that the real tricky part is A, enforcing mining hardware rules in the first place and making people use one thing over another, and B, ensuring that ASICs are equitably distributed and accessible to everyone, because that, I think, puts a little bit more power in the hands of hardware manufacturers than it does people. And that is a problem that this type of thing doesn't solve. This research says what might be, but it doesn't take care of the human aspect. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below if you think ASIC mining would work. Now, I mentioned in the intro that Ethereum has a problem, and that is true, but this is not the doom and gloom scenario that many might think it is. Let me explain. One of the major concerns with Ethereum in terms of how it can scale long term and how accessible it is long term is the fact that it's a stateful network, meaning that for nodes to be meaningfully participating in block validation and consensus, they have to store the entire history of the blockchain, which gets pretty darn large to store if I'm being honest. And this is even more of a factor in Ethereum 2.0 spec, which is why it was designed to be stateless from the very beginning as a fundamental requirement for proof of stake and sharded networking. And this makes sense because when shuffling nodes between shards, one would otherwise need a multitude of full blockchain ledger copies if a stateful model were used in sharding. It just simply wouldn't work. However, for the Ethereum proof of work chain that still exists today to be part of the Ethereum 2.0 ecosystem when it does come, or simply even just to survive until ETH 2.0 is ready, the Ethereum 1.0 chain will have to be shifted towards that same stateless model, in my opinion. The real risk is that the POW chain, often called Ethereum 1.0, will become far too bloated and far too congested to even survive until Ethereum 2.0 is fully initiated. Now, the problem is that the complexity of this type of cryptography is rather high, and being able to securely and efficiently perform operations necessary to allow block validation without holding full state of a blockchain network is not an easy task. The reality is that most major blockchain protocols also suffer from the fact that they are stateful and participating nodes must hold a copy of the ledger. So this is not really limited to Ethereum in terms of a problem. That's why I say it's not all doom and gloom. This is a problem that not only the Ethereum community is challenged with working on, and I have a feeling that by the end of the year, if not early next year, there will be a more concrete solution to this problem. And if so, I would argue that there should be research conducted to enable light validators to be entered into the Bitcoin network as well using this technology. It would greatly improve decentralization of the network by reducing the hardware capabilities necessary to perform full node duties, and I think it would open it up for more people to run full nodes on things like their smartphones, for example. Speaking of Ethereum though, actually, I did want to touch on smart contracts for a second, because I read a couple of interesting pieces this week about the use of smart contracts and the value of applications built with the technology. The reality is that smart contracts themselves are really not all that powerful or really not all that smart. And even the burgeoning DeFi space is not remotely secure or effective with smart contracts unless they have secure Oracle technology to provide trustworthy priced feeds into smart contracts to make that logic work. Now, what I believe is that without adjacent technologies to help smart contracts be more secure, more efficient, more easy to use, smart contract-based applications will never achieve their potential, or they'll always be hamstrung by issues and problems and limitations that basically cut down on functionality. That said, these articles that I read also shared the sentiment, making a claim that, for example, IoT sensors and connected devices are critical to smart contract applications. More specifically, I believe that a suite of IoT devices will be essential in bridging the gap between the physical and the digital world, where digital assets represent physical ones, and so they can be effectively tracked on a blockchain. That's a real issue that I think not a lot of people really think about, is that you can tokenize something, but an instance where, say, an escrow service smart contract relies on knowing when the delivery of some physical goods happens before it allows payment to be released, there has to be a way to know definitively in a decentralized way whether a product was delivered or not. Otherwise, you're relying on potentially manipulated tracking data that would then release an immutable, irreversible payment in one direction. I also think that technologies that fit into the widely varied and admittedly totally misnomered often artificial intelligence bucket will be critical for the future of this tech. Hear me out. One of the big design parameters for consensus mechanisms is to be as unbiased and fair as possible. But the reality is that data that goes into other conditional logic within smart contracts is not subject to that same sort of scrutiny or processing. I think that there's a distinct opportunity to use machine learning models, for example, to create unbiased rationalization layers for data that's going into smart contracts through oracles. If a Chainlink oracle were to provide a data set to a contract, for example, this layer could assign a data risk score in terms of how likely it is to contain errors or inconsistencies or biases. Truth be told, I think that the future of virtually every application on Earth will include, in some capacity, blockchain, IoT, and artificial intelligence branded technologies. I think it's going to be the future tech stack of the world, to be quite honest with you. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time for 404 Logic Not Found. And for those of you who are as of yet uninitiated in this little firecracker of a segment, I basically highlight notable tech-related fails or otherwise stupid moves in the world that need to just get some attention. And speaking of attention, if you want to help this video right here get some attention from the YouTube algorithm gods, please do hit the like button on my behalf and I really do appreciate that in advance. Now today, I need to point my frustrations at the very algorithm that put this video in front of you today. For months now, YouTube has targeted legitimate YouTube creators who put together educational content on this platform with strikes, with bans, demonetization, and the like, which for all intents and purposes should not be a surprise given the nature of the cryptocurrency space. There are a lot of scams in the space, no doubt. However, the bigger issue is that there are a plethora of bold-faced scam live streams pretending to be Vitalik Buterin or Elon Musk, saying we'll double your Bitcoin if you send us some Bitcoin. They're not only allowed to remain on this platform, but also have been allowed to appear on the trending page or even run paid ads to promote their scams. And this cannot happen. I've spent months trying to develop a series of strategies to coordinate response to these scam streams and to get them banned, but it appears to me that YouTube's approach to removing these scams has actually inadvertently hurt legitimate creators and actually helped these scam streams. However, there is of course this issue that YouTube, a multi-billion-dollar business, seemingly not having the wherewithal to work around this issue, which is a technical issue in my opinion. In my mind, there would be no issue banning crypto addresses in videos, descriptions, and comments altogether, such that no scam stream could collect or post addresses for crypto transactions. Secondly, I would ban all crypto-related giveaway videos from appearing in suggested, appearing on the main page, and appearing basically anywhere on platform. Honest creators will have no issue giving up the rights to run giveaways in their titles and in their live stream headers. We don't need that stuff. There has to be more of an effort put into stopping this from happening, not for us creators, but for those who will inevitably be scammed by these people running these scams. I don't feel like enough is being done, personally, and quite frankly, the approach taken to date is more so punitive towards people like me and enables scammers to thrive even more with the lack of competition. Oh, and by the way, the response to this whole thing is not, oh, join another platform and stop complaining, because YouTube has billions of eyes that want to see this content and deserves to see this content, and YouTube can and should get this fixed. So 404, logic not found. And for you Cardano fans out there, I do have some interesting updates from the second day of the Cardano Summit. And most of all, I wanted to hear about where we are in terms of smart contracts on the mainnet. And so that said, we've got a lot of information on that on the final day of the summit, the Cardano Summit, which happened at the beginning of July. Now looking at this diagram here, I'll show it on the screen, outlining the roadmap for Cardano Goguen, you can see that the foundational components of Plutus, the functional programming language that will be used for smart contracts on the network, is already well underway and will enter into mainnet code bases starting here around Q3 of 2020. You can also see that we can probably expect a testnet version of the smart contract functionality around Q3 as well, along with the initial developer tools to make these updates useful. Now this is the update that I wanted to see. More than anything else, more than just saying, okay, Goguen coming, I wanted to make sure they wouldn't just push a testnet version of Goguen and a new virtual machine without putting any tooling or documentation out there to help developers get started building things in testnet. Because if you can build things in testnet, you can then port them to mainnet day one. So in my mind, documentation and developer tools are arguably of greater importance than having a good language. If people use your language and can actually get functional apps built fast, that's a win. Now, based on the roadmap image that I showed you, it seems that Goguen mainnet release is slated for late Q4 2020 or early 2021. The diagram is a little bit loosely defined, which follows my initial thoughts about this, and I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. This is a critical update, and I'd love it to hit ahead of the first steps for Ethereum 2.0's phase 1, which will come early next year. Now, another thing to note here is that Marlowe is also included here, which is something I don't think gets enough attention. Now, for those unfamiliar, Marlowe is a project that allows non-technical folks to easily and quickly create smart contracts compatible with the Cardano network using a graphical user interface instead of writing code. Essentially, it's a layer of abstraction on top of Plutus, the smart contract language, that allows non-technical people to make smart contracts. And this is going to be huge because there are not a lot of tools like this, and Ethereum is just now starting to do this. So if they can release Plutus and Marlowe before the end of the year, that would be miraculous. But of course, 2021 isn't bad either, and we should definitely be patient with this. So I'm very excited for this Cardano update done. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to keep the party going, then please do check out my top 3 VPN picks here in this video that I'll link on the screen. It's more important now than ever to add a layer of encryption over your internet traffic when folks are working from home. And of course, thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel. I really appreciate it. And I want you to have a fantastic, fantastic weekend, you and your family. And I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.